Hi, welcome to the April 6th meeting of the Kubernetes VMware User Group. On the agenda today, I'm going to give a brief presentation covering recent updates to the cloud provider for running Kubernetes on vSphere, as well as an update to the CSI storage plugin for running on vSphere. Then I've got little bit of discussion about the future of this group. Also, I'm going to lightly cover a physical event we're planning to have at KubeCon in Amsterdam, starting about 2 weeks from now. Also, if there's anybody who wants to add anything to the agenda, or if not, we can just go free-form birds of a feather on anything anybody wants to talk about at the end of this. I did prepare a deck for what I'm about to present, so let me post a link to that deck in the chat, and it's also in the meeting notes, and then let me share my screen. Just a minute, let me find the controls on this. Okay, here's the agenda. Well, I just discussed it, but I'll move on. So we'll start with the CSI driver. There is a new 3.0 release. It came out fairly recently. The feature set is that the primary feature is it supports version 1.26 of Kubernetes. Just a caveat here, I know that the company Datadog conducts an annual survey on Kubernetes usage, and their survey indicated that the most popular current Kubernetes release deployed is 1.21, which interestingly enough has reached ends of life in terms of service. Nonetheless, there are plenty of people using it. This new CSI driver supports a minimum of 1.24. So should you be on an older release, what I'm about to say here is something you might use in the future, but you shouldn't attempt to deploy it now because it isn't supported on those older Kubernetes releases prior to 1.24. The key what's new features are that it supports the CSI plugin supports use across multiple vCenter instances. Now, that multiple vCenter instances thing is potentially valuable, but I want to caution you that it's mainly a thing that you do for availability or performance. In other words, getting volumes provisioned more quickly or going to larger scale, such as going beyond 10,000 block volume deployments. But when it says multiple vSphere instances, you do have to be cautious because you are not allowed to share volumes across these vCenter instances. What I mean by that is that if one vCenter happens to provision the volume and the compute that is consuming it is on a different vCenter, that will not work. So the multiple vCenters can be used to host components of what's going on with the storage plugin. It's more a scale performance availability thing. You do have to, and you do have to be careful, and there are mechanisms in Kubernetes to allow you to do this, to not attempt to cross-share volumes across the vCenter volumes. It also added GA support for raw block volumes. So these are the situation where you've got an app like MongoDB or Cassandra that prefer to consume their storage in the terms of a raw device mount rather than a file mount for purposes of accelerating performance. And then the last two bullets you see there are support for the XFS file system, as well as support for volumes consumed in Windows. These are the issues resolved in that 3.0.0. I don't know, I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them off the PowerPoint slide. And if you get this deck, all of those things that you see here in blue are actually links that would lead you to the actual issues, so you can learn more about these resolved issues there. There are not any other patch releases to the older ones. Those were still last updated a while ago, and we covered these at the meeting in December. So I've got a link here to that deck from December, as well as those patch releases that kind of have happened in the last 6 or 9 months. So if you're on those older ones, there is nothing new so far this year. But if you haven't updated for a long time, this information that's linked here might still be valuable to you. In terms of known issues, I just looked them up this morning. The last update to the issue list was 3 days ago. And the release notes do have some known issues as well. So I just encourage you to go click on those links and follow them. Or if somebody has a specific thing they want to discuss here, we could do it at the end of this meeting. Moving on to the cloud provider, release 1.26.0 came out. And once again, this is support for Kubernetes 1.26. There are recent doc updates at the link shown here. There is a current issue on that. The latest issue update occurred on February the 1st. You can go to the GitHub repo to go learn more about that. Unlike the CSI storage plugin, there have been recent patch releases in March to just about all the cloud providers. Those items here that you see referring to a bump in the Golang package is related to a security issue, a CVE, and you can click on those links in the deck to learn more about those. There were some other fixes associated with these updates to the cloud provider as well. So these are the main feature updates to that 1.26 release. vSphere credentials from a secrets directory. I do want to shout out that we did get a number of contributions from non-VMware employee contributors: Kenichi Omichi from NEC, Brian Topic from SAP, and Michael McCune from Red Hat. It looks like there are a number of valuable feature adds and issues resolved on this list. So once again, click on the links to drill down to learn more. The docs for this, now we're moving on to updates to vSphere itself, specifically here, vSphere 8, and I'll get to vSphere 7 next. But the vSphere 8 docs were updated on February the 7th. You can follow the link here. There was an 8.00C update to the binary, and I'm giving you the release notes here. That's a vCenter update. The last vSphere update was just a little older than that. That's vSphere 8.0B, and you can download it there and find the release notes. If you still haven't moved on to vSphere 8, these are somewhat older blog posts, but Cormac Hogan gave a good summary of what's different in vSphere 8 and vSAN 8 versus 7. Then there is the annual conference, VMware Explore, and there is a comprehensive list of all of the on-demand sessions that occurred at the VMware Explore conference, and want to thank William Lamb for compiling that list of links. Moving on to vSphere 7, Update 3, Release L. The release notes for that were just updated yesterday, and the actual download is a little older than yesterday. I think it was sometime in February. But go examine those release notes to learn more about that. I think there may have been some of those things covered in the release notes that are in the realm of security patches. So it might be advisable to go do that using the usual methods that are built into vSphere. So that's the end of my slideshow. Let me stop sharing. Getting back to the agenda, we've got a couple other things going. One is the future of this group. So this group came about under a Kubernetes project charter. I think that this occurred maybe 3 years ago. It's been a while. And the original anticipation in the steering committee was that all the cloud providers would commission their own user groups. The ones other than VMware would be public clouds like AWS, GCE, Azure, but that never actually happened. And the steering committee has observed what's going on here and observed the fact that these aren't super popular, although I think they are valuable to the people who continue to attend, and they've never spread across the other cloud providers. So they've expressed a desire that maybe this group get green twilighted in the June timeframe. So that means next month might be the last month. And if users want to have sort of an equivalent in order to attempt to build a bigger critical mass, also an observation that many of the things discussed here technically are not the Kubernetes project itself, but collateral things like load balancers, ingress. The latest activity on ingress is actually the gateway API, which is recognition that maybe ingress wasn't standardized as much as it should be. So the CNCF has come up with a new spec called the gateway API that takes on the same role as ingress, but has tighter specifications so that there are perhaps less variations. You know, people have complained that as you move from one cloud to another, things go on with ingress that make you non-cloud native, where things that would work on one cloud don't work on another. Anyway, the bottom line is that there is a suggestion that we should perhaps commission an on-premise user group, not under the auspices of the Kubernetes project, but under the auspices of the CNCF. I don't know that we'll be able to do that by June, if June is the last meeting of this group, but if there's interest, we could perhaps attempt to do this on a longer term time frame, maybe having it ready in time for KubeCon North America in November. And the goal here would be to make this go beyond just a VMware thing, that maybe we'd bring in other people, both users and vendors, that are associated with on-premise use of Kubernetes. And that by doing that, we could get more people involved on the vendor side as well as the user side. So we attempted to have discussions of this at KubeCon in Detroit last year, but we got a slot for that discussion on Friday, the last day of the conference at 4:30 p.m. and only 5 people showed up. So I don't know that we actually even got a representation of different opinions, particularly opinions of actual users. So Brandon, I know you're here now, so I would appreciate if you have any thoughts on this, whether you think that maybe trying to start up an on-premise user group kind of similar to this, but a little broader in scope would be useful to you.
It's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, we use multiple vendors for on-premise already.
Right.
So,
I think I've heard from some people at Red Hat that they'd be interested in joining such a group, and maybe you could suggest some other names on the vendor side to invite. And of course, it isn't going to work unless we actually have users like yourself there.
yeah, I think it'd be almost probably the most beneficial to those trying to figure out how to get started
Uh-huh.
with on-premise stuff. Um,
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And maybe I'll follow up with you going forward in the future. Like I say, I think that this might slide off into later this year. Um, no, everybody in the CNCF is caught up with KubeCon itself in Europe at this point, so nothing's likely to move. But I know that there's a person with the CNCF who is in charge of community, Taylor, who has expressed an interest in trying to make this happen. But we're going to have to get a few people on the user side to, so that we don't start holding meetings and nobody shows up. I know when we started this group, it was you and somebody from T-Mobile who were initial participants. The person at T-Mobile moved on to a different job, so he's kind of dropped off the map, Joe Searcy. But maybe we'll see if we can get him involved with his current employer. And I don't think we'll manage to resolve anything on that topic during this meeting. Moving on, the other thing I put on the agenda was the upcoming KubeCon event itself in Europe. There is an organization, ITQ, that has had people show up to this meeting in the past. They're not here today, but they are going to be sponsoring a physical user meeting in Amsterdam. They're calling it a VBeers event. They actually already posted a link in the Slack channel for this group and got a lot of people who went and registered off that link, to the point where the original venue didn't have enough room. I think the original venue, they said, anticipated that about 25 people would show, but they got more than that. So they're in the process of trying to sign a deal with a larger venue that might hold over 100 people. If that happens, people who registered for the original event will have to re-register for the new location. They should get notifications by email. And as I understand it, it's another one in the vicinity of the convention center. But this is not an official KubeCon event. The reason it isn't is that it is thought that there are people in the area who can't afford the expensive registration for KubeCon, or can't go because they're working their day job, but they wanted to leave it inclusive of everybody in the area. So they're declaring it sort of just a generic VMware user event. And in fact, people are welcome to attend if they haven't even embarked on the journey of using Kubernetes at all, but are perhaps interested in going in the direction of cloud native. So just wanted to throw out that update since it had been posted out on the Slack channel. Bryson, by any chance, are you going to Europe, or you're going to sit this one out?
no, I mean, travel to even the local North America one, I don't think is going to happen this year with the economy.
Yeah.
So,
if by chance Walmart does have Europe-based people who will be there, perhaps it would be valuable to pass along the information. I don't know if that's the case or not, but just FYI.
yeah, I don't think there is anyone that would be there, but yeah, good to know.
Okay. And with that said, I think we've expired out what's on the agenda. Is there anything else you would like to discuss, throw out there, or suggest?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. So if you wanted, if any of that in that deck was of interest, I posted the link to the notes. I can post the direct link to the shared deck as well if you want that. Let me see, let me just do it regardless, so it's in the chat stream. And then maybe we'll just close this thing a little early.
I think you already did. There's a drive link I grabbed.
Okay, that might, I don't know if it was, yeah, that probably is the deck. Okay, got it. Okay, well, unless there's additional stuff, thanks for joining. And I do anticipate holding a meeting next month just to announce the twilighting, if nothing else. So if you're there, I'll see you there. And if there is anything you want to bring up there, go for it. If there is anything relevant to this that happens at KubeCon, I'll give a brief presentation on that as well. So I guess we can leave it at that. But once again, feel free if there's anything you want to discuss, go add it on the agenda. Anyway, thanks for coming, and I'll close this meeting out now.
All right, thanks.
Okay.